All right, so welcome to another deep dive, everybody. And today we are taking a look at a company with one of the most fascinating stories in recent business history.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Groupon.
Yeah.
It's really a story of, dizzying heights and a fall almost as dramatic.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, think about it. This is the company Forbes once called the fastest growing company ever.
Right.
They turned down a $6 billion offer from Google.
Yeah, crazy.
So what was behind that confidence? And what happened? Where did it all go wrong?
It's a wild ride for sure.
It is.
To really understand it, we kind of have to go back to the beginning, back to the early 2000s when the internet was still relatively new.
Yeah.
And Groupon, they were offering local deals like, for restaurants or spas, but with a twist.
Right.
The deal only unlocked if enough people signed up for it.
That tipping point idea.
Exactly.
Why, I remember that.
That sense of urgency.
Like racing to get enough people signed up.
Yeah, totally.
Before the deal expired.
It was like a game almost.
Yeah.
And that's part of what fueled their just crazy viral growth.
Yeah, they went from what, like 1.8 million subscribers to 115 million in under 2 years?
Yeah, it's mind-blowing when you compare it to like Facebook.
Right.
Which took 4 years to hit 100 billion users.
Wow. Yeah, that really puts it into perspective.
Yeah.
So you have the internet boom, this clever deal mechanism, and then at the helm you have the founder, Andrew Mason.
Right.
What's his story?
Well, he wasn't your typical tech CEO.
Yeah.
He was a musician.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then he transitioned into programming.
Huh.
And get this, he actually started Groupon as like an offshoot of a social activism platform called thepoint.com.
Interesting. So that idea of collective action, getting people together to achieve something,
right,
that carried over to Groupon.
It did.
But instead of a social cause, it was about a discount on pizza.
Well, pizza and sensory deprivation chambers.
What?
Yeah, that was like a pivotal early deal for them. And it really showed the power of the model in action.
Really?
You had the exclusivity, the buzz people literally pulling their friends in to try to unlock that deal.
Wait, tell me more about this sensory deprivation chamber deal.
Okay, yeah.
Was it just the novelty factor, or was there something else going on, do you think?
I think it was more than just wanting a discount.
Yeah. Okay.
It was about being part of something, a shared experience, that exclusivity, made it feel even more valuable.
Right.
Plus, a sensory deprivation chamber is pretty far out there.
It is.
So it created great story,
Yeah.
Something people wanted to share.
Right. It was almost like an early form of social media marketing before social media was even that big.
Exactly.
So it's not just about saving a few bucks. It's about being in the know, being part of the trend, and then, of course, King, the IPO in 2011. That was peak Groupon.
Oh, absolutely. They went public at a valuation of over $16 billion.
Wow.
From side project to multi-billion-dollar company in just 3 years.
That's insane.
Yeah. It really did seem like they were on top of the world.
Yeah, so we have this perfect storm, the internet, a clever business model, explosive growth, and a charismatic founder.
Right.
But I know this story doesn't have a fairy tale ending.
It does not.
What were some early signs that maybe things weren't as rosy as they seemed?
Well, one of Groupon's co-founders described it as catching a tiger by the tail.
Okay.
And I think that image is pretty apt.
Yeah.
Because that kind of rapid growth can be so difficult to manage.
Especially when you're a first-time CEO.
Yeah.
Managing a small team is one thing.
Totally.
But scaling that to handle millions of customers and thousands of businesses, it's a whole different ballgame.
Absolutely. And it was all happening while a flood of competitors was entering the market.
Right.
So suddenly everyone wanted a piece of the daily deals pie.
Yeah.
And that meant that Groupon's initial advantage was quickly eroding.
Oh.
Yeah, things were about to get interesting.
So they had all this incredible growth to manage and all these new competitors popping up left and right.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any internal challenges at Groupon that you think might have contributed to their struggles?
Yeah, I think there were definitely some internal issues.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big ones was this kind of culture clash that was happening,
Okay.
Groupon had this very playful, almost irreverent image.
Right.
Which really set them apart from the typical Silicon Valley tech company.
Right. It was like they were always trying to be a little bit edgy, a little bit different.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that Super Bowl ad they ran about Tibet. It started as a serious message about a humanitarian crisis.
Right.
And then suddenly it was an ad for like cheap Tibetan food.
Yeah, that ad is a perfect example of their very unconventional approach to marketing.
Yeah.
It definitely got people talking, but it also sparked a lot of controversy.
Yeah, for sure.
Some people saw it as insensitive and exploitative,
Right?
and it kind of raised questions about what their brand values really were.
Yeah. It seems like they were walking a very fine line between being edgy and being offensive.
Yeah, they were definitely pushing the boundaries.
And then there's Andrew Mason himself.
Right.
His departure letter was absolutely classic.
Oh, yeah. I've decided I want to spend more time with my family. Just kidding.
Yeah.
I was fired today.
Yeah. Do you think his unconventional style ultimately hurt Groupon?
It's tough to say for sure. I mean, there's no doubt that Mason's personality was a big part of their early success. It made them stand out.
Right.
But then as the company started facing more and more challenges, maybe investors were looking for someone who projected a little bit more stability.
Yeah.
A little more seriousness.
Right. Someone who seemed like they could steer the ship through rough waters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if his humor, which was so effective in those early days, maybe started to feel a little bit out of touch.
Yeah. Maybe a little tone deaf.
Yeah.
As the company matured.
Right. So it wasn't just the quirky marketing and the CEO who liked to joke.
Right.
There were some more fundamental issues with their business model itself.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about that. Because on the surface, the Groupon model seems brilliant.
It does.
Businesses get new customers, consumers get great deals, Groupon takes a cut, everybody wins, right?
Right. In theory.
Right. So where did it start to unravel?
Well, for businesses, offering deep discounts can be kind of a double-edged sword.
Okay.
On the one hand, you get this surge of new customers,
Right.
but you're often selling at a loss.
Yeah.
You're hoping that those customers will come back and pay full price later.
Right. So did that happen? Did Groupon users actually become loyal customers?
That's the thing. For a lot of businesses, the answer was no.
Really?
Groupon users were often just chasing deals.
Okay.
They weren't really looking to build those long-term relationships with businesses.
So for the businesses, it was more like a short-term marketing expense
Yeah.
rather than a sustainable growth strategy.
Right.
And if the businesses aren't really benefiting in the long run, that kind of undermines the whole model.
Exactly. And remember, Groupon is taking a cut of every sale.
Right.
So they were profiting even if the businesses were losing money.
Huh. And didn't a lot of Groupon's competitors end up failing as well?
Most of them did, actually.
Really?
Yeah, almost all of the daily deal companies that popped up around the same time, they all went out of business.
Wow.
Which makes you wonder,
Yeah.
if the model itself was really sound, shouldn't at least some of them have figured out a way to make it work?
That's a really good point.
Yeah, it suggests that maybe the problems weren't specific to Groupon.
Right.
Maybe there were some inherent flaws in the business model itself.
But they did try to pivot, right?
They did.
Didn't they try to move into e-commerce?
Yeah, they tried to become more like an Amazon or an eBay, selling a wider range of products.
Right.
But they faced a lot of challenges there, too.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, they were entering a market that was already incredibly crowded
Yeah.
and dominated by these really established players.
Right. Like it's hard to compete with Amazon.
Yeah, exactly. And then they got hit with a class action lawsuit from investors.
Oh, right. I remember reading about that.
Yeah, the investors felt like Groupon hadn't been transparent about the challenges they were facing,
Okay.
with their core business. And that this move into e-commerce was kind of a desperate attempt to salvage a sinking ship.
Right. It sounds like they were trying to outrun their problems instead of actually addressing them.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And despite all of these efforts to change,
Yeah.
Groupon has been unprofitable for most of its existence.
Wow.
Their losses have far outweighed their gains.
It's really remarkable that they've managed to survive it all,
I know, right?
considering everything they've been through. But it makes you think about the psychology of deals.
Yeah.
It's not just about saving money.
No, it's not.
There's something else going on there, right?
Absolutely. There's definitely a psychological component to deals.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a thrill, a sense of satisfaction that comes from finding a bargain.
It's almost like a game, You're constantly hunting for that next great deal.
Right.
And when you find it, it's like this little victory.
Yeah, to rush.
And Groupon really tapped into that
They did.
with their limited time offers and their tipping point mechanic.
Right. It created that sense of urgency.
Right, like fear of missing out.
Exactly.
It became a habit for a lot of people, checking their email every day, waiting for that next Groupon to drop.
Yeah, it became part of their routine.
Do you think that kind of deal dependency is ultimately harmful?
I think it can be,
How so?
or if you're constantly chasing deals, you might be less willing to pay full price for things,
Okay,
even if those things are worth it.
right.
And for businesses, it creates this race to the bottom.
Yeah.
They have to keep offering deeper and deeper discounts just to stay competitive.
Right. So it's kind of a vicious cycle.
It is.
But isn't that just the reality of the online marketplace these days?
It's definitely a trend we're seeing.
Yeah. Everything is about instant gratification. We want it now and we want it cheap.
Exactly.
But is that sustainable?
I don't think it is in the long run.
Right.
You know, there has to be a balance. The businesses need to be able to make a profit.
Right.
And consumers need to understand the value of what they're buying.
So maybe the Groupon story, with all of its ups and downs, can serve as a kind of cautionary tale.
I think it can.
What do you think are some of the key takeaways from Groupon's journey that businesses today, especially those that are operating online, should be paying attention to?
I think one big takeaway is the importance of thinking long-term. Groupon grew so fast, but it seems like they were so focused on just getting those new customers that they didn't pay enough attention to building lasting relationships.
That's a great point. I mean, customer acquisition is important,
Right.
but it's just one part of the equation.
Yeah.
You gotta cultivate those relationships,
Right.
provide real value that goes beyond just giving people a one-time discount.
Yeah, and maybe that's where they really missed the mark.
They were so good at attracting those deal seekers,
Right.
but they never figured out how to turn those deal seekers into loyal, repeat customers.
Exactly. It's like they almost became a victim of their own success in a way.
Yeah.
You know, their brand became so associated with deep discounts that it was hard for them to break out of that.
Right, and it's interesting to think about, their attempts to move into e-commerce.
Yeah.
It seems like they were trying to take that same model and apply it to a whole different market.
And that almost never works.
Right.
You can't just take a model that worked in one context and plop it down in another.
Right.
You have to adapt.
Yeah.
You have to really understand the nuances of that new market.
It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Exactly.
It just doesn't work. But here's a question that's been kind of rolling around in my mind.
Okay.
In today's world, with social media and influencer marketing and everything, could a model like Groupon, maybe reimagined a little bit, refined a little bit, actually make a comeback?
It's a really interesting question. And honestly, I think there's definitely some potential there. I mean, the things that made Groupon so successful in the beginning, that power of group buying, the thrill of getting a deal, the sense of community, those things are still really relevant today.
So maybe it's not about getting rid of discounts altogether, but finding a way to balance them with other value propositions like exclusive experiences or personalized recommendations.
Right. Or even like focusing on supporting local businesses and sustainable practices.
Right. Things that people actually care about.
Exactly. I think that's key. Consumers are getting more discerning. They're not just looking for the cheapest price anymore.
Right.
They want value that aligns with their values.
So maybe there's a future for a platform that combines the best of Groupon's deal-finding abilities with a more curated, community-driven approach. A platform that connects people with local businesses that they can really feel good about supporting.
Yeah, I love that idea. But that would require a pretty big shift in thinking, both for Groupon and for consumers.
Right. It's not going to happen overnight.
It's not. But I think it's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, the landscape of online commerce is constantly changing.
Always evolving.
Exactly. So who knows what the future holds?
Maybe Groupon or some, savvy competitor will figure out the secret sauce and bring us into like a new era of deal making.
That'd be cool.
One that's less about, frantically hunting for bargains. And more about creating those meaningful connections between businesses and consumers.
I like that.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the fascinating, sometimes baffling world of Groupon.
It's been a ride.
It really has, and it's given us a lot to think about.
Definitely.
We've explored their business model, the challenges of hypergrowth, the constantly shifting landscape of the online marketplace.
It's a lot.
And hopefully we've uncovered some insights that'll be helpful to, businesses of all sizes.
I hope so.
Whether you're a tiny startup or a massive global corporation.
Yeah.
And I think the Groupon story really reminds us that even the most spectacular successes can be fleeting if they're not built on a solid foundation.
It's true.
But it's also a story of innovation and resilience and the power of human connection.
It is.
And who knows, maybe there's a second act waiting to be written.
Maybe. So the story of Groupon is still unfolding.
As is the story of the internet itself.
Exactly.
As always, subscribe to our channel, like the video, and comment below. There are also some links in our description that you may find useful. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye.